All right, well, welcome everybody to our June the 2nd CAO committee meeting of the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission. We still have CAOs signing in and joining us that have RSVP, but what we thought we'd do is we have a quorum, but we expect a few more to join us. But to get some of the preliminaries out of the way, I'm going to go ahead before I turn it over to our chair, Mary Bunning from the City of Hampton. I'm going to go ahead and read into the record on electronic meeting language. Pursuant to the declared state of emergency in the Commonwealth of Virginia in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and to protect the public health and safety of committee members, staff, and the general public, today's meeting is being held electronically via Zoom. These electronic meetings are required to complete essential business on behalf of our region. Per the requirements of the Code of Virginia, we posted the meeting notice, agenda, and supporting documentation on both our PDC and TPO websites for public review. Electronic copies of today's meeting materials were also provided to our CAO committee members and other interested parties. Members of the public were also provided with the login information for this electronic meeting so that they may provide public comment at the appropriate time on today's agenda. Madam Chair, I am aware that we have at least one public comment today. Mr. Mark Badul-Divyatrovsky will be addressing the CAO committee when we get to that point on the agenda. Just as a reminder, today's meeting is being recorded and will be available after the meeting through both of our websites. Before we begin today's meeting, just a couple of housekeeping tips. Would ask that all participants remain on mute with their phones and computers until it's their time to provide input or until the chair calls upon you. After speaking, please remember to go back on mute. Very helpful if you identify yourself by name and your locality when speaking or providing a motion or a second. And as a reminder, per the requirements of the Code of Virginia, all votes taken today must be made via roll call. Madam Chair, I know we're in that difficult time of the year where a number of people are traveling to bring kids home from college and other events happening. We do have a quorum. We expect a few more CAOs to join us, but we do have a quorum to conduct business.
All right, thank you. Given that we
have a lighter than usual.
Okay, given that we have the quorum, I think we can proceed with the approval of agenda and the approval of minutes if there are no changes to the minutes. As most of you know, because of the need for roll call, we've been combining those into one motion so that we don't have to do repetitive roll calls. First, let me see if there are any proposed changes to the minutes. If not, may I have a motion to approve the agenda and the minutes?
So moved. Randy Wheeler, City of Pocosin.
Thank you, Randy.
Second, Amanda Jarrett Franklin.
Thank you, Amanda. Bob, could you please do the roll call and vote?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm going to go down through alphabetically. If I'm going to do my best. I know we have a couple of deputies sitting in today, but if I call your locality and I don't call you by name, if your locality is represented, if you could please indicate so. So let's begin with the City of Hampton. Mary Bunning.
Aye, here.
Virginia Beach, Patrick Dehaney. Norfolk, Chip Filer. On to City of Franklin, Amanda Jarrett.
Here, yes.
From Southampton County, Mike Johnson.
Yes.
From the City of Portsmouth, Angel Jones.
Yes.
From Isle of Wight County, Randy Keaton.
Yes.
From the City of Suffolk, Al Moore.
Yes.
I know from York County, we have Mark Bellamy sitting in for Neil Morgan today.
Yes.
Thanks, Mark. From Chesapeake, Chris Price. From Newport News, Cynthia Rawl. From Surrey County, Melissa Rawlins. From the town of Windsor, William Saunders.
Yes.
From the town of Smithfield, Michael Stallings.
Here.
From Gloucester County, Carol Still.
Yes.
From James City County, Scott Stevens.
Yes.
From Williamsburg, Andrew Trivett. And from Poquoson, Randy Wheeler.
Aye.
Madam Chair, we have 12 of our 17 committee members here. We do expect 2 more to join us today.
Okay,
I did hear from both Chris Price and Cynthia Rolfe that they got called to deal with matters with elected officials today.
understand, but just for the record, our quorum is just a simple majority, so we're good, correct?
That's correct. Your quorum today is nine people.
Thank you. That'll bring us to public comment, and as you indicated, we do have at least one member of the public requesting for public comment, so we'll turn it over to you, Mark, if you want to go ahead and make your public comment now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay. Madam Chair, honorable committee members, and neighbors. My remarks are directed toward your agenda item 7, bullet 3. Should the July 7th CAO committee meeting be held virtually or in person? They say it's an ill wind that blows no good to anybody. And so it is with the COVID pandemic. One of the benefits, one of the silver linings in that very dark cloud has been the fact that a number of public bodies have held meetings that were accessible by electronic means to a larger audience than normal. And this committee is one of those. The other benefit has been that through the miracle of modern technology, proceedings have been recorded as they happened where they had not been before. That is the case with this meeting. The one spoiler is the lunches were so much better in the before times, but you know, you take the good with the bad. At any rate, my urging to you is that on the 7th, if your technical gurus can manage it, I would recommend a hybrid approach. I have become the patron saint of the virtual meeting, it appears. I've made the same plea to other public bodies. But there are definitely certain benefits that flow from people being in one room together. But there are also benefits to people who find themselves tied up, as many of you have been when these meetings have been scheduled and unable to make the trip. So it's just as important, I think, for the members as for the outside participants to have that option. I thank you very much.
Thank you, as always, for being with us and for your commitment to our region. We appreciate that. Are there any other public comments, people wanting to make public comment today? Hearing none, Mr. Crum, I did fail to, as we normally do, recognize other people in attendance. I know that's not formally on the agenda, but I think as a courtesy, it would be great if we could have those in attendance introduce themselves. I know we have several regular attendees such as Drew Lumpkin and Diane from the senator's offices. So we want to recognize and thank them for being with us, as well as Mr. Carley, who often attends. I can't see everyone's name on my screen, so I don't want to leave anybody out. But I think maybe you, Mr. Crum, can see who all's on the meeting and have them, recognized.
Yes, I'd be happy to do so. I'm going to pause on introducing our speakers, since you'll get to meet each of them as introductions before they speak. But we do have from Senator Warner's office, Drew Lumpkin. Drew, you with us today?
I am. Thank you, of course, for having me.
Thank you. I see Diane Kaufman from Senator Kane's office.
Thank you, as always. Always a wonderful, informative meeting. Thank you.
Caleb from Representative Loria's office.
I'm here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Caleb. Let's see, Jason Brown. Jason, do you want to do a quick introduction? Let's
Good morning, everybody. Sorry for the delay there. I'm Jason Brown. I'm the Public Information Coordinator for the City of Chesapeake's Public Works Department. Here with Director Earl Sorey, PE today from the Public Works Department here.
Very good. And you're going to hear from a couple other Chesapeake staff a little later. I'm just going to take an opportunity to introduce you. You all know Greg Grutendorf, so you'll see in a moment. But John Harbin, I don't know if you had a chance to introduce yourself to the CAO committee from our HRPDC team. John?
Hi, yes, thanks, Bob. My name is John Harbin. I'm a senior planner here at the Planning District, and I work with Greg Grutendorf on his planning and economics team, and I'm happy to be here.
Hey, thank you, John. Sorry for that surprise, but I thought I'd give you that chance.
Fine.
I think you've all known Katie Collifer. Katie, what quick introduction?
Good morning. My name is Katie Collifer. I'm environmental education planner here at the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission, and I work with your local staff on recycling and litter prevention outreach programs.
Very good. I think most of you, if not all, know Mark Bellamy, the deputy from York County. But Mark, real quick introduction. Hey, Mark. There we go.
Technology is a great thing, right?
I know. I love it.
That might be the best introduction right there.
Thanks, Mark. Just wanted
Thank
to see your face there. Appreciate you being with us today.
Yes, sir.
Peter Stevenson.
Morning, everyone.
Thank you. Peter, of course, from VRSA. We have Pavitra and Keith, our deputies today. P. Teague, quick introduction, please.
Hi, my name is Patrick Teague. I'm the Human Resource Director for James City County.
Perfect. Thank you for being with us for the second discussion on today's agenda. Rebecca Eastep from the HRPDC is with us today. Rebecca?
Good morning, Rebecca Eastep here, assisting Katie with the Essence Degree in Environmental Education program here at HRPDC.
Great. We have Michelle Gotti. Michelle, thank you as always from Virginia Municipal League for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And I know I missed someone. If there's anybody that I didn't introduce, if you could please identify yourself.
Hi, Ron Carley from ODU. Good to see everybody.
Sorry, Ron. Yeah, thank you, Ron. Appreciate you being with us. Our guest speakers you're going to meet in a moment here, but anybody else that I missed? All right, Mary, thank you. Back to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Like I said, I couldn't see everybody on my screen for some reason. That brings us to our first item of discussion, which is an update on regional recycling issues throughout the region. And I know you mentioned we have several people with us, and I assume you'll make those introductions for us.
Yes, let me tee this up for us today, and then I'm going to turn it over to Greg Grutendorf for a little bit of some introductory slides, and then you'll hear from a series of speakers that we have before you today. As a little bit of background information, I have had 4 to 5 of you reach out to me over the last 6 to 8 months saying that in terms of thinking of future CAO committee agenda items, that a regional discussion about recycling would be a really good item to have for a briefing and information sharing. And I think that I've even heard repeat calls saying with these markets really becoming more questionable, just understanding the lay of the land in the region, understanding what each locality is thinking about in terms of recycling, and that type of information exchange would be very, very valuable to you. So I think the CAO committee will be pleased. We have a great program for you today, I think, to sort of give you that information level set on the lay of land and recycling in the Hampton Roads region. Greg has been working to meet with his team with some of your local staffs Some of them are with us today to give you the briefing. Now, as a read ahead, you had a one-pager. Katie Colfer, thank you for putting this together, I believe with John Harbin. But you had a one-pager that hopefully you all had a chance to take a look at. That was attached to your agenda that talks about a little bit of background information on where people are with recycling. So with that, Greg, why don't I turn it over to you? Greg, I think you have a couple of slides. You should be authorized to share screen, and I'll let you set the stage for today's conversation.
Thanks, Bob. Hopefully this screen share is working.
Yeah, we have it, Greg.
Excellent. Well, as Bob mentioned, there's been a lot of discussion on recycling in our jurisdictions and across the region, especially over the last couple of years. And we have a lot of challenges that we're facing. And as staff, we were trying to look for a way to address some of these challenges in a way that makes a whole lot of sense and kind of wrap our arms around the issue, so to speak. One of the things that we know is recycling is broken. And I laugh at this picture. This is my neighbor. And I'm sure you guys have all seen your neighbors do similar things. My neighbor has 2 garbage cans and 3 blue cans that are also garbage cans. And this is routine. I laugh when I drive out of the neighborhood because I don't want to cry when I see what people are putting in their recycling bins. But this is not just something that's Hampton Road specific. I just pulled this quote out of thehill.com. It's become clear that our current approach to managing waste and recycling is failing our nation and our citizens. It's expensive, it's wasteful, it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. And, you know, when this ends up at the recycling plant, and I've been in the recycling plant, you can see that there's just a great deal of trash there. But recycling is broken in just a number of ways. And I think we're all becoming more and more aware of just how broken it is. On the flip side, our residents consider recycling to be essential. So just recognizing that it's broken and doing away with it is not something we can do. A recent survey, Norfolk residents showed overwhelming support for recycling. I've got this word cloud here from Smithfield that said the number that in their recent comp plan, they put out a survey, lack of recycling was the #1 dissatisfaction. And even our neighbors to the south in Outer Banks, they got rid of recycling temporarily because the feedback that they received for it. So it is broken, we recognize that, but our residents consider it essential. And we know from looking at other areas of the globe, we can do it and it is done well in certain areas. So with that, we thought, we had this conversation with the CAOs a while back. We thought we would just look to our localities and strike up a conversation with key staff from member localities to see what their thoughts were on what's going on with recycling, you know, what can be done, and is there any potential to work together on resolving some of these issues. And we had this meeting back on April 14th. The majority of our localities were represented. It was an incredibly healthy discussion. I think we didn't want to stop. I think there was a lot for people to get off their chest, but there was also, quite frankly, a lot of interest in talking about these issues. And rather than have PDC staff come and talk to you about what happened, we thought it would be very valuable for key staff from member localities who are really in this constantly to be able to answer your questions and just talk a little bit about what happened. So very fortunate and pleased that Christy Rhines, Earl Sorey, and Dave Magnet were able to join us. And Christy's just going to cover a little bit about, you know, the current landscape of recycling, the history, what's going on now, and a bit of the outlook. And the topic of regional collaboration on this front has come up a couple of times, and Earl Sorey from Chesapeake's just going to talk a little bit about some of the barriers to cooperation. We don't want to be blind to how difficult this can be. And then David Magnet, he's going to talk a little bit about the opportunities. David's with the Virginia Peninsula Public Service Authority, and there's some cooperation going on there. And I think he has a fantastic eye for, what could be done and what's being done elsewhere. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Christy.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Christy Rhines, and I serve as the recycling coordinator for the city of Virginia Beach. I appreciate you all giving us a few minutes of your time to run through a brief history and current status of the recycling for our region. What is recycling? The simplest definition is turning waste into a resource. When recycling first came about, the process was hand sorting at the curb using 28-gallon totes or taking the items to a recycling facility. The process resulted in very clean, sellable commodities. Today, it's commingled, meaning everything goes in a cart with a lid, safe from the rain and your neighbor's judgmental looks. While carts improved service time through the process of automation, it did not improve the quality of the items being recycled. Tell a resident that their yogurt container is not recyclable, and you'll find yourself in a conversation that includes the words Mobius loop and resin codes. As fascinating as that sounds, residents want everything to be recycled, and the result is that every piece of plastic is tossed into their cart. The items accepted today are the same items accepted when our cities first offered recycling to the residents. And while the program has not changed, consumer packaging and buy-in habits have. For the majority of your residents, little thought is given to what is tossed in the recycling cart. Greg pointed that out fabulously with that photo. And even less thought is given to what happens to those items once they make the materials recovery facility and beyond. Your residents have done their part in saving the planet, and now they're off to buy the next single-use item. That mindless tossing creates contamination, and this created the excuse China needed to no longer buy imported materials. China's refusal to buy contaminated bales of recyclables flipped the market, decreasing the amount paid for commodities and creating a high inflow of materials to domestic markets who struggle to handle the quantities. Sorry about my jets. Sorry, not sorry. As with any good, profitability requires selling for a higher price than it costs to make. Failed recyclables are sold at record low prices right now. Contracts once bid on the price to haul now are bid for the price of processing and to offset the amount not being made on the sale of the commodity. Improvements to materials collected and for the processing of those items are not expected to occur anytime soon. The best hope would be that citizens realize the impact of contamination on the overall recycling program so that the material can be cleaner, costing less to process, and ensures that the items are sellable at higher rates. On that note, I'll turn the rest of the discussion over to Earl and Dave.
Greg, I can go next. I want to, again, Earl Sorey, Public Works Director for the City of Chesapeake. This is still an ongoing discussion in Chesapeake. We shared with council that with our current contract and in this environment, we pay roughly twice as much to recycle material as we do to dispose of it. So, that's certainly eye-opening for a lot of folks. But I was going to touch on the barriers to cooperation. And really the first one is as much human nature as anything. It's just easier for us to all kind of do this ourselves. It's easier to get our councils on board with the contract. It's easier to do the negotiations. As you all know, sitting around this table, it takes work to really do something on a regional level. I think one of the other barriers, and kind of looking at the one pager that staff provided, there's very few vendors in the mix right now. Most of it is just one or two vendors, and so the competition that might drive pricing down just simply isn't there. Chesapeake probably has the most recent contract. And because of that, we're the one that was negotiated, after the significant changes with China, after the market, bottomed out. And, I think one of the things that is a barrier to cooperation is, some of us are going to have to be willing to walk away from the contract, even if it's just, for a brief period of time to get people to the table so that we can have some meaningful discussion and talk about, how we can, advance things that's more of a win-win for all parties. But I think the biggest barrier is we all have our own individual contracts, and depending on when those contracts were inked, some people are going to have more favorable rates than others. So, sitting in Chesapeake, we're home to one of the major recycling centers, but we pay the highest rate in the region. We're very motivated to have this regional discussion about what can we do different. If I'm in a locality where I've got a contract that was negotiated, previously, but still has, a number of years, with very favorable rates, I'm probably going to be less motivated to have that discussion. So in my mind, that's probably the biggest thing, is where each respective city is in their contract. I will say though, most of you are familiar with the regional construction standards. When that was first floated, not everybody, fully embraced that. There were, some holdouts. I think that's truly one of the region and the PDC's success stories is getting those out there and having all the localities using that. So I'll stand by for questions later. Thanks.
Hi, this is Dave Magnet with the Virginia Peninsula's Public Service Authority, and I drew the short straw, so I get to talk about the path forward. The best path to success, obviously, is to work together. As a regional authority, we have a little bit of success with that. I still remember the ink being wet on the regional contracts when Isabel hit. So we know that working together is definitely a benefit. Currently, the recycling market has improved a bit over the last 5 to 6 months. I heard Christy and Earl both complaining about the rates, and it has gotten horrible since the national soared. But we're seeing some rates over the last 5 to 6 months that are encouraging. We just redid a drop-off recycling bid, and although there were only 3 respondents, which is better than the 2 respondents that did the CBWMA, which has 13 communities, they only had 2 people bid on their curbside recycling with 260,000 homes. So it's a bit of a challenge, as Earl mentioned, having so few vendors. One of the successes that we've had is our fiber and our mixed paper with multiple. We have 5 or 6 different vendors that we talk to on a regular basis, and subsequently we have been able to receive very good rates over the years. In fact, going back to FY08 when we started asking for rates. And just to give you an idea, this month we're receiving $150 a ton for cardboard and $80 a ton for mixed paper, and that's loose. That's not baled. So, but it's a clean stream, which moves me to a couple of things. Domestic markets are developing. They're not developing fast enough, but they are developing. The state recently provided a grant of $150,000 to Braven Environmental. Their plans to invest $31.7 million to establish a manufacturing operation in Cumberland County. The idea there is it's thermal decomposition or pyrolysis. The term advanced recycling you will hear going forward. It's sometimes called chemical recycling. It's a general term for breaking plastics down into the molecular level using heat or another catalyst in order to create new products such as new plastics or fuel. There, according to the Virginia Economic Development Partnerships report, they say that the Braven Environmental should be able to accept, and we as a recycling entity, we kind of stay away from the numbers, but in this case, they accept all numbers 1 through 7 with the exception of 3, which is PVC. So And they also will include plastic film and plastic bags. So that's very encouraging. I plan to visit that with my counterpart, Kim Hines of CBWMA. Together, we're 23 cities and counties. So we're hoping that that's a positive way forward for some of the material. I know James City is getting ready to do some a glass pilot program. So I think there's a number of opportunities. The key is still working together. As there's only a few vendors, we really need to make sure that, you know, the best opportunity for success is to send a consistent message. We're fortunate that HR Green has done a great job with the wording and what they've done. That's helping putting that information out, continuing to help with contamination. You know, so if we keep looking for new markets, and I think we're heading in the right direction. As I mentioned, Kim Hines, there's several of us that are the regional authorities, and we're looking to get back together. And our intent is to try to look for best practices and best opportunities as the regional folks, and then be able to report back to you, to all of our members, as to what the best forward operations are going to be. And with that, I guess we'll open it up to any questions.
So, Madam Chair, we wanted to provide that background information as a base for this conversation. We could proceed in one of two ways. First, to see if there's any questions for the speakers, but Ms. Bunning, I might suggest that I do a roll call of the localities that are present and ask each to address maybe what the lay of the land is with recycling in their locality. If there's any questions they have for our panel here, and maybe the third thing, do they see opportunity for regional coordination as we move forward?
Certainly, I appreciate that suggestion. One question I do have, and I know that this is something that's driven us as we've thought about these issues, is that we all still have, unless something has changed and I'm not aware of, a mandate by the state of Virginia that we have to recycle so much of our waste stream. And I know that in Hampton, because we have a waste to energy plant, we had pursued whether or not that, elimination of materials going to the landfill might count towards fulfilling that goal, and had been told no. So one of the issues sort of posited was having the willingness to walk away from contracts in the short term to get long-term gain. But if we have those mandates from the state, how do we do that? And I don't know if the panel's given some thought to that, if you're positing that we try to work together regionally for a regional contract or some greater effort. How do we manage that while also adhering to the state requirements that could result in financial penalty to our locality if we don't meet the required thresholds?
This is David Magnet with VIPSA. I remember Jason Mitchell asking me that exact question, and I did pose that to DEQ as to whether or not they'd be willing to accept that material. One of the largest contributors to our region currently is the compost facility. So we get more towards our goal used at the VIPSA compost facility than the curbside or all the others. I think I can't speak to whether or not the state's ever going to ease the restriction or allow us to do to count waste to energy. I believe they should, but that's going to be a question that we can certainly talk to the state about and ask them. But I guess what I really wanted to say is that I think the opportunities are maybe instead of just curbside recycling, we work on other things like the composting and things like that will help us meet our goals.
Okay. I will just share, we did have the conversation with the state, and at least right now, they're not allowing waste to energy to count. like you, I think it should count. I mean, it's reducing what goes into the landfill, which is the ultimate goal of all of this. But it's good to know that we're achieving a lot with the composting, and I agree that we need to think out of the box. I would struggle as a locality about possibly walking away from a contract and thus not meeting goals unless we had some way to otherwise meet the goals. So certainly look forward to hearing some of those other ideas as to how we might achieve that. Are there other questions or discussion that folks want to have before Bob does the suggested roll call? Hearing none, Ms. Crum, do you want to go that route?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. So just a couple of things, maybe if you give an update on where recycling stands in your locality, maybe where you see things going in the next 6 to 12 months if possible, and whether you see any benefit in regional coordination. Can we start with the city of Franklin today? Amanda?
Hey, good morning. Can you hear me? So our contract term for curbside recycling was up at the end of May. So due to issues surrounding this discussion and the costs that were discussed previously and the timing, we chose to end the contract with Bay Disposal. So the curbside recycling did end. However, we are still recycling all of the green waste, which helps us meet our recycling goal that's mandated. And then we have facilities throughout our downtown area that accept recycled cardboard material that we know or understand from TFC that is being recycled. So we are continuing that, and we'll add an additional facility for individuals to drop off cardboard and paper. We are not opposed to restarting the curbside recycling program at all, but would want to do it in either some regional method or a different venue than what was going on because of the issues that were just outlined by the speakers. So that's where we're at.
Thank you, Amanda. On to Gloucester County, Carol Still.
Hi, we have our contract with Waste Management, which we just made a few modifications on and did not address anything with recycling because there wasn't going to be any hope at that time. When the crisis happened, Waste Management in Gloucester stopped recycling glass, and they also stopped recycling with private vendors for that you can pay for curbside pickup. And so we're still doing the plastics 1 and 2 and the motor oil and the paper, but we never have had cooking oil, and they have not shown an interest in that. And the picture from the slideshow looked like Gloucester County with throw everything and anything in the recycling bins. That's it.
Thank you, Carol. Mary, on to Hampton.
Yeah, so our contract came up about 1.5 years ago, and we renegotiated it, had much higher rates, raised our solid waste user fee to accommodate those higher rates. Had some discussions in the community. People were very committed to keeping curbside recycling from a residential base. We continue to work on education efforts to try to mitigate the contamination that occurs. But we do have a current contract and adjusted our rate structure to pay for that additional amount. We were absolutely open to regional coordination. Just need to figure out sort of the timing. I don't think our community is prepared to walk away and cease curbside recycling collection for a period of time to get there. But perhaps a phased approach would allow us to be a partner in the recycling initiative.
Thank you, Mary. Randy, on to Isle of Wight County. Randy Keaton. So Randy may have stepped away. Whoops,
No, sorry about that. I hit the wrong button.
That's okay, Randy.
So yes, we have drop-off sites. So it's a little bit easier for us to contain the contamination because we have an attendant there to direct people if they try to drop off items that are not allowed. We're also able to handle bulk items like steel and things, and we can take those directly to the processors. We're continuing to accept recyclables. We have Bay Disposal raise our fee It's just slightly more than what we pay for disposal of trash, but it's still fairly reasonable at $65 a ton. We did talk to the board about that, and they agreed that as long as it was a small differential, we would continue recycling. But if the differential becomes too large, it wouldn't make economic sense to recycle when it's cheaper to take it to the landfill, unfortunately. But for the time being, we're continuing to do as we have in the past, and hope that the markets will regain a little bit of economic sanity.
All right, thank you, Randy. James City County, Scott.
Good afternoon. Yep, James City County, we're all part of the VITS contract, meaning myself, or James City, York, Williamsburg, and Poquoson. So when you see the pricing being there, that's the price that we pay as the local government. In James City County, we do charge our residents $7 a month, and so they don't get into a tonnage fee on their side. And thus far, we've had very good participation. Our residents do have an expectation, as Mary mentioned, of recycling being there and others. They really believe in recycling. I guess my concern is when they someday really ask, and they have, is it being recycled? I can't truthfully tell them yes. And I think I really, really worry about percentage that are thrown away. And we're getting reports from TFC. And I don't think most of them would consider the beneficial fill of landfill cover being recycling. I don't believe that's what they intend. So I worry an awful lot about that. And so, the future of it, I think the residents have the expectations. I think we'll continue to try to provide it. But I think we've got to find a way to make sure we're really getting it to a recyclable market. So as domestic recyclers develop and improve, and we really feel better about the prices, and we can really reinforce that, then I think it's got a pretty good future. We've got residents wanting and willing and expecting us to provide it. I just worry of the backlash when they figure out that it's not as good as they thought. I will mention, we have an O&I pilot project. Owens, Illinois has a glass producing facility in James City County. They've got 14 or so plants throughout the US. They came to us and said they would like to do something with glass. We've been talking with them for the past year or so. And most recently, they came and said that they would, any glass we could get them as a single stream, they would guarantee would come back through a recycling process and turn back into a bottle. So initially, we're going to have drop-off containers because we do accept glass currently in our curbside collection. But we're going to start setting out some containers and encourage our residents to go single stream, where we can better guarantee that glass turns back into a bottle. So Owens, Illinois, when we asked why here, one, they like the region, but the real answer, I think, is they felt Virginia wasn't doing a very good job with recycling, period. And they wanted to try to improve that with a pilot project. And I think they're really hopeful that many of you will see the value in single stream glass, bring it this way, or let us come collect it. So if there are others that have an interest in that, I think we in James City would want to talk with you about that. And Owens, Illinois had talked about if we had enough glass coming in, that they would build a processing facility at their site here in James City County. Currently, they've got an agreement to carry it elsewhere and bring it back. But ultimately, if we could bring single stream glass to them, they could use, they say, all that we could bring. So we'll see. I do think the regional coordination makes a lot of sense, and the timing of it, to Mary's point, it may just be over the next 5 or 10 years. We have to have a phased plan that gets us there. But one of the first big steps is that we all get into recycling the same things. And that probably is difficult with all these different contracts and different providers, but it's confusing to the residents when one does glass and one does not, and one accepts yogurt cups because they're just not worried about it, and others are trying to be more strict. And so I think those are things that if we could work towards consistent messaging in the region and working with our recyclers, I think contractors, I think that would be helpful. And I do want to thank all those participating in the conversation today. The information really is great from those of you at the front lines of that. And I appreciate your time and effort of talking to the CAO group. And again, I know our boards and ourselves are concerned and interested in how we make it work as well. So thanks, Bob.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Poquoson, Randy?
Okay, I'm glad I followed Scott. We're VIPSA members as well, and our experience and concerns pretty much mirror Scott's. And I think generally all of us at VIPSA have essentially the same thoughts about regionalism as it seems to work for us. Concerns that that there is an expectation that a much higher percentage of the recycling stream is being actively recycled. And we're all scratching our heads because we know that amongst the reasons for that is the choices and behaviors as represented by Greg's picture that our citizens are making themselves by contaminating the waste loads. They are decreasing its value, sometimes to the point of making it unusable. So I think as we go into the future, preferably after I retire, we're really going to have to do some tough love. If recycling is something we want to do, we may have to change how we message it and how we do it to get back sort of to what I was used to in Spotsylvania. We didn't have curbside pickup. We had recycling centers, kind of like Randy Keaton was talking about. And we had people there that would monitor that the green glass was going here and the brown glass was going here. And we're there to make sure that that's what happened. And that's the only thing that happened. If we're really going to increase the percentage as well as the value, meaning lower the net cost, we have to think in that direction or begin to implement parts of that. Scott talking about a potential market for single stream glass is a great idea, and we'll figure out how to get on board and support that, because that hits all of our goals. Glass, as we know, is one recycling commodity that has, other than contamination stuff, one of the lowest values. So if this is a way to create a market or fuel a market, that's a great thing. That's all I got.
Thank you, Randy. Let's move on to Portsmouth. Angel. Angel Jones, are you still with us from Portsmouth? Let's move on to Smithfield. Michael.
Yes, sir. I mean, you guys all saw, we were in the presentation. As we were looking at ways to close the budget gap last fiscal year, recycling was one of those topics that came up. And knowing that what was being collected in the town of Smithfield was either being incinerated, which ironically is the same place the trash is going, or being landfilled, our council saw no reason to continue to pay for that. So we elected to discontinue curbside recycling. We did allow them to pursue a franchise agreement if enough people wanted to do that. So if somebody wanted to still recycle, they could contract directly with Bay to do so. It's my understanding not a lot of people ventured to do that. We talked about it. We looked at what Nags Head had done because they had just done it previously, used some of their information. And, we once we informed the citizens that, hey guys, we're paying, for us, it was $134,000 a year to have somebody haul your stuff to the same place the trash is going. Most of them got it. There's still some that say, oh, I want to recycle. But once you explain to them where it's actually going, they understood why we got rid of it. Why pay $134,000 for nothing? I mean, reality. And I think that it's a valid point that as people begin to understand that, they'll either A, change behaviors to make the commodities worthwhile, or B, they'll come to the same decision that we did, that at some point in time it's no longer economically feasible to continue down the path we're going. I mean, I'm excited to hear that there are some other opportunities out there. Once they become available and economically feasible, we may get back on board, but that's where we are.
Very good. Thank you, Michael. Let's move on to Southampton County. Mike.
Yeah, so we have just renegotiated our agreement with Bay Disposal. We run a curbside collection system in all 6 of our towns, as well as about 5 of our larger residential subdivisions. And then we also have drop-off sites at 12 of our refuse convenience sites across the county. The program gets a lot of support from the public. We've heard no real outcry to stop it from any of our board members, although everybody understands right now that, as Michael just mentioned, all of them are going to the same place that the trash is going to.
I've got a lot of historical memory. I can remember many years ago when all 8 of the communities on the south side through SIPSA participated in a regional recycling program. Probably about 20 years ago, the beach was the first to get out because of cost. And then about 10 years ago, the rest of the communities jumped off the ship as well. So now we're left to fend for ourselves. But I think there's still great value in working cooperatively together, and we would certainly be interested in working together as a region moving forward.
Thank you, Mike. Suffolk, Elmore.
Yes, good afternoon, Bob. Suffolk, of course, we still have our contract with TFC. It's bi-weekly and it expires in 2025. We do have a strong section of our population that wants us to continue recycling, which we have. And I think the key to it is education on our part. We still, like many of you, and I actually police the pizza boxes at my house. So we just need to educate our population because we see everything going into the bins too. And of course, as like many of you, we're always open to talking regionally, and anything that we can move ahead and look at, we'd be interested in that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. On to Surrey County, Melissa.
Yes, good morning. Don't have a whole lot to add. I was really interested in hearing what others were doing in this regard. This is a topic that actually just got on my radar to take a look at over the past couple of weeks. So we are actually in the process right now of renegotiating our contract with Bay Disposal as well. We have an arrangement whereby they have an exclusive service area where they're picking up trash curbside from a number of residents. And believe it or not, for the business community as well, as strange as that sounds, we are actually paying for the tipping fee for them to dispose of the waste at our businesses. But nevertheless, we do have recycling containers at 2 of our 4 convenience centers. And I do not believe at this point that our community has a strong appetite for recycling, but this is something that we want to see whether or not we can actually change. So right now, I just don't think we have an effective recycling program. But again, this is something that I just started to look into with the last couple of weeks, and it's good to hear, the conversation as to what others are doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Let's move on to the town of Windsor, William. William Saunders, are you still with us?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, we have a contract with Bay Disposal for curbside pickup of refuse, and also a franchise agreement with them for curbside pickup of recycling for businesses and residents that want to sign on. There previously was not much of an appetite. I believe it was in 2015 they polled the town at a contract change. There was no interest townwide to have it for everybody, so it ended up being set up that way. Of course, we are a town within Isle-of-Wight County, which means that their convenience centers for recycling and refuse are also available to town citizens as well. When I came in August, I did find some notes that my council is interested in renegotiating their contract in the fall of 2021. So I know they're going to be looking at that next year. I don't have in front of me what date that contract expires.
Thank you, William. In York County, Mark?
Sure. No epiphanies here after that long list. But we're on the same program as Scott Stevens and Randy Wheeler with VIPSA. David has taken good care of us through that contract. We're doing curbside as well as a drop-off center. We have had this conversation in the last couple of years, and when this first went south, and there's a lot of desire to stay with recycling. I don't think our community wants to get away from it. I'm hope they were hopeful that we would be able to weather the storm. But as we can see here now that we're having this conversation, we're not doing so well. But we would be open to some regional work as well.
Thank you, Mark. Ms. Bunning, I just wanted to pause a second and make certain I didn't pass over someone who was on the call from a locality. So if there's any locality that I didn't call on and wanted to provide comments, if you please could. I'll just pause a second there. The other item, Ms. Bunning, I know that Michelle Gowdy from VML and I have just been exchanging some messages. I know Michelle was multitasking here, perhaps on another call. Michelle, are you with us? Yeah, sorry, I know Michelle had some thoughts, but maybe we could come back, as I know she was jumping on another call, Ms. Bunning. So I'll pause there and turn it back over to you.
Okay, so it seems like there's a very strong consensus that we want to work together on this issue. We do have varying needs based upon our locality's interest in whether and how much we're committed to curbside recycling, but I heard everyone say work together. So it's probably best that we continue to use our committee structure to advance this and look at some of the timetables where we may be able to align better to achieve some synergies.
Madam Chair, if I may a second, this was very helpful for our staff. First off, I really want to thank Christy and David and Earl for their work, and they're representing a group of staff members from the localities. We think it could be very, and I hesitate to say this because I know how tough your schedules are, but we think it would be very valuable if perhaps, just as you've done with some other items, a subcommittee of CAOs, maybe 3 or 4 of you representing both Southside and Peninsula, could get together. We could staff that and maybe form that type of conversation that group could report back to this bigger CAO committee, potential thoughts and ideas. So that could be one approach for us to move forward.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if there was an appropriate existing committee or whether you would suggest something new. So I appreciate that recommendation. Is everyone comfortable with what Bob is suggesting? Okay, great. I want to thank the team of presenters. This was a very helpful discussion, and we appreciate you providing your experiences and background and helping to answer some of our questions. I think we will, as is typically the case, we will all be stronger together, as we work more collaboratively on some of these challenges. So thank you for teeing that up for us today, and for, I presume, your willingness to work on this new committee.
Madam Chair, would it be possible to call for maybe 2 CAOs from the South Side and 2 from the Peninsula that could work with us on this topic?
Yeah, I think that would be great. Perhaps what you could do is, and follow up to the meeting, I know you usually send out presentations after the meeting, maybe do that. And for our peers that weren't able to be on the call, let them know that that's what we've decided and we're seeking those volunteers. It may be that some of our peers who weren't here today have a particular passion and want to be a part of it. Of course, anyone who's on here today is also welcome to volunteer. So
very good. So I will follow up with that, and then we'll look for volunteers maybe over the next week to get that committee firmed up. If that sounds okay.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
And if I may very quickly, Ms. Bunning, don't mean to jump out of order here, but just a thought. So I ran an idea by Scott Stevens, and I don't know if this is a sound one or not, but I was struck by Scott's comments about the private entity interested in Owens, Illinois, interested in a glass processing plant in James City County. And then my thoughts sort of jumped to, what if that were a regional facility? And would there be any connection with job creation? And would Go Virginia possibly consider financing a feasibility analysis to see whether that is a feasible approach. So I don't know if that's a good idea or maybe not such a good one. Scott, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, if it's worth kicking the tires.
Bob, I think the discussion of it would be very good. I think we all have glass and we need a place for it. It's how do we get it out of that commingled mix? And then having a regional facility, whether it's in James City County or not, I think being in the region, it would be of interest to Owens, Illinois. What they're after is a closer processing. As I said, their initial intent is to carry it to a processor elsewhere and bring back the cullets back here so they can make new bottles. So whether that's in James City County or a neighboring locality, I think they would still have some interest in being part of that.
And then I was struck by David's comments about the collaboration. Good to hear you're working with Kim Hines from up in Central Virginia. That David, you had indicated that combined, if you had added in all the Hampton Roads region with Central Virginia, I wonder if that starts to get to some critical mass. I don't know, but just a thought.
Well, we actually tried a combination with VIPSA, CBWMA, and we included Newport News in a regional curbside recycling, just in an effort to kind of bolster the numbers. And honestly, at the time, it really didn't help us, but it wasn't because of the regionalism. It was more that there was just one entity and they were getting it anyway. So there was no incentive for them. I think, recycling, Mr. Stevens mentioned that some of the material is not being recycled, and glass certainly is key amongst that. We all know that it was used for a long time as a sandblasting medium or or as alternate daily cover. And, Scott's right. I mean, VIPS has always tried to make sure that what we say we recycle, we are recycling. Fortunately, the state still says recycling, whether it's alternate daily cover or sandblasting medium, is one of the reduce, reuse, recycle. So they still count it in our regional rate for recycling. Although using the glass in a better method, actually putting it back into a bottle is 100 times better. And certainly VIPSA would support that, at every opportunity. So, but as far as the working together with the rest of them, we certainly need more players. It would be interesting to have a regional facility though.
Well, Madam Chair, what I could do is follow up to this direction then is send you all out with that PowerPoint. We will send a call for volunteers for that committee. And then I can run that by you and Mr. Johnson as chair and vice chair.
Okay, that sounds like a great plan. Thank you all. We have the impact on Virginia marijuana laws on human resource issues as the next item, and also an expected committee roll call on ARP as well as teleworking in our July 7th meeting. And I just want to do a time check and process check with everyone, because I suspect that these conversations will take quite a bit of time. And I want to make sure we don't lose too many people.
Madam Chair, what I could do with the roll call, if it's your pleasure, is I could also do that in an email to all of you. And you could just respond directly to me so your inboxes don't get flooded. But if I could send that out as a survey and you just respond to me, I could compile that information and share it with all.
Is everyone good with that? I mean, I just want to be respectful of time, but I also know that we have the HR director from Chesapeake who's here and geared up to give us a presentation. And this next item was something we were all very interested in. So can I just get, I can't see everybody because many people don't have their screen showing. Is there any objection to that? Okay, great. I'm not seeing any objection. So let's proceed with that way and go ahead and let's get started on the Virginia marijuana topic. And we'll plan to do the CAO roll call by email as Bob described.
Very good. Well, at last month's meeting, several of you during the roll call identified this as an important topic. And many of you felt that this was an immediate topic, that if we could get this topic on the next CAO agenda, that would be very helpful. I want to introduce Ellison Myers, who is the Director of Human Resources from the City of Chesapeake, who came forward very quickly and volunteered to lead this briefing today. So Ellison, you're set up to share screen. Thank you again so much for being responsive and for offering to help us understand this situation a little better today.
Okay, wonderful. I'm glad to be here. I'm going to share my screen and we'll see how technology works for me. All right. Am I sharing? That was the question. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, if you go ahead, hit slideshow and present, we should be good to go.
Okay. So we have some fun coming our way in just a few short weeks with some new legislation regarding marijuana. So first of all, there are two bills. House Bill 1862 presented employee protections with the medicinal use of cannabis oil. House Bill 2312 made marijuana legal, simple possession of marijuana legal, up to 1 ounce for individuals ages 21 and older. And then what Chesapeake is planning on doing in response to these. So first, more about 1862. So it prohibits an employer from disciplining or discriminating against an employee who has who's lawfully using cannabis oil. They have to have a written certification, and it has to be used for treatment to eliminate symptoms of an employee's diagnosed condition or disease. However, it does not prohibit us from taking adverse employment action for an employee coming to work impaired or due to the possession of cannabis oil during working hours. And it does not require us to commit any act that would cause us to be in violation of federal law. And what makes this a little trickier is that the federal law, of course, has not changed. So marijuana is still illegal at a federal level. So then House Bill 2312, which legalized marijuana, eliminates the criminal penalties for simple possession of marijuana. And like I mentioned earlier, that's up to 1 ounce for individuals ages 21 and older. But employees can still be disciplined for being under the influence at work, or if they're using marijuana off duty and they do not have a prescription for doing so. Federal law still says this is a banned substance. So what we have done, and I can show you some of the communication that we've developed, but we send out all staff emails every Tuesday. It's just our standard protocol. We sent something to all staff on May the 11th, letting them, making them aware that this was coming. This also clarified that employees subject to Department of Transportation or pre-employment and random screenings are still obligated to follow our drug-free workplace standard. And so therefore we can still discipline and terminate employees who are found to have used marijuana and do not have a prescription for doing so. We have also created what we consider somewhat to be an easy to understand flyer that further communicates what this means and what it doesn't mean. We've educated supervisors on this change, and we're updating our substance abuse policy on this change. But what makes it very challenging is I think people think, oh, now it's legal in Virginia, so I'm good to go. But the reality is that if we drug screen someone and they are positive for marijuana and they do not have a prescription for using marijuana, then we will follow our drug-free workplace policy, which says that we'll terminate them. And even with the medical use of marijuana, it still has to be in a position where they could, reasonably use marijuana and still conduct their job duties. So, we're going to have individuals that may request accommodations under the Americans with Disabilities Act, or they may just have to take leave. We're going to have to handle it on a situation by situation basis, like we handle other Americans with Disabilities Act requests. I'm sure we have questions.
Well, first off, I want to thank you again for being willing to share what Chesapeake is doing and how you've approached this and to be with us today. Let's go ahead and open up the floor for any questions or discussion.
I've got one. Michael Stallings with Smithfield. We've been discussing this pretty heavily, and I think one of the issues we come up with is how do you determine impaired? With alcohol, obviously, there's a threshold of blood alcohol level. I haven't seen anywhere where anybody's established what that tolerable threshold is to not be impaired. So how are you guys addressing that?
So our reasonable suspicion policy, or drug-free workplace policy that has the reasonable suspicion criteria, indicates, if the person appears impaired, similar to what we would do with alcohol. So, their eyes or, they're glassy, things like that. So they appear impaired. Two supervisors have to witness the impairment, and then we can send them, any employee, we can send them for reasonable suspicion. If they have marijuana in their system, so they could have, smoked marijuana 5 days ago, but if they have marijuana in their system and they do not have a prescription for it, then we will still follow our drug-free workplace criteria. There is, unlike alcohol, where it metabolizes very quickly, and so if someone had a glass of wine 2 days ago, it's not going to still show up in their system today. Marijuana doesn't, and our drug screening vendor, who is NowCare, there's not a test sophisticated enough, or at least not one that they have, that they could determine, oh, well, the person, consumed or did whatever with marijuana, 3 weeks ago. It very likely would still be in their system. So we wouldn't be able to ascertain whether it happened 2 hours ago or 20 minutes ago or 3 weeks ago. So that's the risk that an employee takes if they want to consume or smoke or do whatever you do with marijuana. Then they're running the risk that they could lose their job over that.
Right, and that's kind of the issue we've dealt with. And you talk about the folks that have medical cards. Let's say they get in an accident, they automatically go for a drug test, pop positive. Again, how do you determine that they were or weren't? I think the state loves to do this. They love to issue things without giving us all the information to implement. And I just see this one winding up in court eventually, and I think it's setting somebody up for failure.
This is Amanda. As a follow-up to Michael's question, we've had this same discussion amongst my HR staff and we utilize Sands Anderson, but in my mind, this should have been hashed out in the courts in Colorado or some of the other states that have had legalized marijuana previously, because I definitely see a scenario where someone with a prescription card legally consumes marijuana on a Saturday, is in an accident, maybe through no fault of their own, later in the week, and pops with THC in their system, but they did a legal activity in their home utilizing all of the requirements that they had. So how are we, is there case law from other states that Virginia's looked at? Because we're not the first one. So I was just wondering what best practices we've seen from other states.
I'm not aware of case law from other states, but when an employee, so if an employee's in an accident and they're tested, and then they're going to speak with the medical review officer. So if they're able to present that they are legally prescribed marijuana, that's going to be taken into consideration. Just like if you're taking a controlled substance and you have a prescription for it, that's taken into consideration when an employee is sent for a drug screen. Now, obviously, things like cocaine, they don't have a prescription for that. But they're looking for, if you're taking Adderall or something like that, they're looking for a prescription for that. But yes, they could have used more than was prescribed. I don't know that the test is sophisticated enough to delineate that. And we also have a requirement in Chesapeake that if you're taking a medication, that you have to share that with your supervisor so we can make sure the medication is not going to prohibit you from doing your job. For marijuana, we're going to have them run that through human resources. So we have some additional cover, making sure that we don't have someone who is in a safety sensitive job and supervisor said, oh yeah, that's fine for you to, to be using marijuana and working.
Hi, this is Carol Steele from Gloucester. How are you handling or going to handle new hires when the drug screening, are you not going to hire them now if they test positive?
Correct. So we're still a drug-free workplace. So if we send them for a pre-employment drug screen and they test positive and they don't have a prescription for marijuana, then yes, we would not hire them.
I think it'd be beneficial if you could send us some of the information you guys have put out, because we're working on that as well. And some of the questions that you've answered are ones that we had. I still think there's a whole lot of questions out there, and hopefully somebody else has to deal with it before I do.
Always wishful thinking.
Anyone else? Yeah, I think we've hit on that sort of the most difficult thing, which is the long-lasting effects in the body, because clearly alcohol is already a legal substance, but we discipline for that if there is an impairment on the job. And so it's a very analogous situation. The only challenge with this, of course, is that it stays in the system so much longer. So it's hard to know, as you said earlier, Ms. Myers, how long it's been there, and whether it really was a contributing factor to impairment at work or not. So it's going to be new ground. I think the question about case law in other cities, in other states where they've had this, is a really good one. And perhaps we can have some folks, maybe various city attorneys or other HR departments are looking at that. I noted that Peter Stevenson posted in the chat that VRSA is hosting a member roundtable discussion on this topic tomorrow and on June 29th. If you haven't seen that in the chat, you may want to look at that for the dates and times in case that's something you would like to join or have one of your staff join. And it looks like Ron Carley is also posting some resources for us in the chat. Thank you, Ron and Peter. Anyone else?
Mary, this is Randy. I want to thank Allison for the information she provided. We're all struggling with this to some degree or another. I actually thought I would struggle with this with prescription medical marijuana earlier than I've had to. We haven't yet, but that'll happen at the most inopportune time, I'm sure. But one thing I had not thought of, and again, I appreciate Allison's presentation. We've been going through our policies and trying to look where sort of the rub for the new state law would be, and trying to figure out when we're going to figure out the answer. But the focus that you have on the fact that it is still a illegal drug at the federal level, everywhere where we say illegal drug, it's still illegal, because we don't in our policy say state illegal drug, we just say illegal. The thing that I am most taking away from this, in addition to that point, is that we have employees that probably are laboring under the impression that after July 1st, if they're over 21 and they are not, by their definition, whatever that might be, impaired at work, that's something they can do on a Saturday night or whatever. And given the fact that these drugs can stay in your system for weeks, I don't know how long they stay, but weeks, we may run into a problem in July unless we've really done an education process with our employees between now and then. And so again, thank you for putting that bit of perspective on my radar screen. Hadn't really looked at it with that focus. So thank you.
Absolutely. And I will send to Kelly, I guess, a copy of the all staff communication that we've sent out and the flyer that we've sent out. So you're welcome to use them or modify them to, however you see fit in your municipality, if that's helpful.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? All right. Well, having agreed earlier that we would do the roll call by email, we'll just check and see if there's any other business for the group before we adjourn today. On the specific question on July 7th, being virtual and in person, have we verified that we would still have the ability to meet virtual? Means to some extent, I thought if the governor terminated the emergency, our ability to meet fully virtual would end. And so, I mean, as we answer the question in our roll call emails back to you, is there some legal advice that needs to be provided about that?
Well, the item in through VML, I know Michelle and her team are monitoring this, but of course the governor's current state of emergency ends on June the 30th. There's a lot of conversation. I'm sure you heard. Some believe that it will be extended. Others aren't sure. So we're going to have to monitor that. If the state of emergency is not extended, then our ability to meet virtually will go away. But if that is extended in some way, shape, or form, then we would still have the ability to meet virtually.
Okay, so I just wanted to put that caveat out there. It may not be a choice.
That's correct. But I would rather sort of see where you're all sitting. If it is a choice,
okay.
I just want to do what was best or what was the opinion and will of the CAO.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I'd like to know that from everyone as well. But I just wanted to put that out there on the record. It may not be a choice, depending upon what the governor does as we approach June 30th. So even if our preference were to be to meet virtually, we may have to have a plan B as we get closer to that date and find out whether it's extended or not.
And this is Michelle Gowdy. I'll just tell you that the chief of staff of the governor's office this weekend said that they have not made that decision yet on what they're going to do about electronic meetings. But one of the deputy secretaries last week said they're going to end it on June 30th. So I feel like the deputy secretary is probably right. But again, the chief of staff wouldn't confirm that.
Okay, thank you.
So could I just for clarification? So Michelle, that source indicated that the ability to meet electronically might end June 30. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle. Mary, if you don't mind, if I may, very quickly, Michelle, I know you were multitasking on another call, and Mary, if I may, I don't mean to prolong it.
That's
but Michelle, there were some interesting points you and I were texting back and forth on related to the recycling conversation and whether or not waste to energy could be counted towards a locality's goal for recycling. Do you know if that's something that other members of VML have discussed at all?
So I know Lexington had a lot of questions about it about probably 6 months ago or so. What I was thinking about while I was listening to that conversation was Preston Bryant is on a retainer with us from McGuire Woods, and he does a lot of the environmental things. It might be worth us trying to talk with him about it to see what he thinks we could do or how we should, sort of prepare for that conversation. But I also think the election may make a difference depending on what happens with the House.
Very good. And Mary, if I may, Michelle, the other question that just came up related to the marijuana laws is whether or not there was any case law history from other states like Colorado, where some of these issues the CAOs were talking about might come to light. Do you know if you've seen any good case law as follow-up to Ellison's discussion?
So I won't lie to you. I'll tell you, I phoned a friend on that because Sam is also a friend of ours, and they're going to do a webinar next week. I can't remember what day it is right now, but you certainly, all of you are VML members, you're welcome to sign up for it. If you're a county, you're welcome to sign up for it anyway. But they're going to do a webinar, and I think that they'll address that issue. And they're also asking for questions before the webinar. So it's something that you could ask ahead of time that they would be prepared to answer.
Great. Thank you, Michelle.
Hey, Bob.
Yes, Randy.
Hey, one thing for a future meeting is kind of a follow-up to the HR issue regarding marijuana laws. We're actually doing a briefing to our board this week in work session about whether we're going to allow marijuana dispensaries in the county. So that's the next issue is, there's certain rules you have to go by whether you want to ban them or not ban them. So that might be another topic of conversation to see which localities are leaning which direction.
Thank you, Randy. All right, anything else for the good of the group before we adjourn? Hearing none, I want to thank everyone for joining in on our regular meetings. Look forward to seeing you in July, whether it is virtual or in person. And thank you in advance for sharing any information you can when Bob sends out the roll call questions. So, and don't forget, we need those 4 volunteers for the recycling committee. So if you're inclined to volunteer on that, please let us know. All right, it was great seeing everyone.
Thank you, Mary.
Enjoy your summer.